Hi, I wanted to do today's video on mental compulsions. I'm Momin, by the way. Mental compulsions is something that comes up frequently in the OCD community, something that a lot of people do struggle with, and I wanted to tell you guys about how I experienced them and what I did differently to tackle them. So maybe that might give you some tips as to how you can tackle yours as well. I started to have OCD in 2007, and then and all my compulsions were physical in the beginning. So I suffer from contamination OCD, so they were related to cleaning. Sometime about 7 to 8 years later, I think, in sometime 2014, I believe, I began to suffer from mental compulsions, and they they came on so gradually and so slowly that I did not even realize at first that they were happening. But they were so automatic and they kind of sneaked up on me, so they were very unexpected and definitely something that confused me a lot because I had never experienced them before and I had never even heard of anybody who experienced something even similar to what I was experiencing. I would get these intrusive thoughts about certain things that I thought were contaminating my brain or my thoughts. And so I would push those thoughts away constantly all the time. My, I would say my contamination was associated with the university I was going to at the time. So not just the university, but the people over there, the teachers, the places, the names, every single thing related to it was an intrusive thought in my head. So you can imagine the amount of names because there are thousands of people in a university, so you can imagine the amount of names that would pop up in my head, or the other amount of small things that would come up in my head. So I would constantly push those thoughts back, and I would try so hard to think about something that was completely unrelated to my university, something that did not make me think of anything related to that, which was almost an impossible task, obviously, because thoughts are thoughts. You can't really control them. They flow like water. They keep rolling in. So it was. I knew it was futile for me to try to control them and try to push them away and get rid of them, but I did it all the time because I did not know any other way I could deal with it at the time. And this was a 24/7 thing that I did. Every waking moment, it would happen all the time. While I'm talking, while I'm eating, while I'm like doing any basic thing, which made everything seem very less enjoyable. I could not be present in the moment. It would, yeah, because my focus was so internalized. I was so up in my head all the time that I would not enjoy anything. Um, I would not indulge in anything properly. And to say the least, this ended up making me perpetually exhausted, emotionally drained, physically drained, mentally drained, of course, and to a point that I started to also feel very numb and emotionless as well as a result of this because I was so, yeah, I was so tired all the time up in my head. Um, yeah, so it became a very isolating thing as well because I did not know how to explain it to someone and how to talk to someone about it, and it was so automatic. I Even if I tried not to do it, it still happened because it was automatically going on in my head. Um, so it had become a learned habit of my brain, in fact. Um, but then over the past, and since then I've had mental compulsions, by the way. So, but over the past few months, I have gained a lot of insight into OCD generally, into how mental compulsions work, and yeah, generally how anxiety works and how to do exposures and how to dispute your fears and beliefs. So, and those are things that have helped me tackle it. I want to go over that one by one. Um, and because of doing all those things, now I'm in a much better place in life. And my mental compulsions have gone down. I actually wrote those things down in front of me just in case I don't forget to mention them. So yeah, the first thing that I really started to focus on was to try and let go of the control that I was constantly exerting on my brain and my thoughts. So this takes time and practice for sure, because like I said, mental compulsions are so automatic that you don't even realize when they're happening. But yeah, I started to really practice to not control my thoughts and let those intrusive thoughts come in. Let those uncomfortable thoughts come in. Let them make me feel contaminated up in my head. And sometimes what I would do is that I would specifically just take out 15 to 20 minutes in a day. I would sit down and I would close my eyes and I would just let go. I would let go of trying to control my thoughts, and I would, in fact, at times even consciously think of those things that made me feel very, very, very uncomfortable. And and initially, I think I started with like 15 minutes, and then I kept increasing it to 20, to 30, to 40, to an hour. Um, and it becomes really good practice eventually. At least it did become good practice for me to do that. Needless to say, even though those thoughts did feel very uncomfortable, that exercise also felt incredibly liberating and freeing as well, because I could feel myself ease up, because I was not constantly exerting that futile control over myself or over my thoughts. Um, so it did feel good as well. The second thing that I did was, this is how my intrusive thoughts worked. That because they were happening 24/7, um, if I had to pick up an object from somewhere, um, the moment I pick it up should not coincide with a contaminated or intrusive thought in my head. Um, it had to be at the very moment that I think of something completely unrelated. And that was an impossible task, almost an impossible task, because I would keep repeating that action of picking something up until and unless it did not coincide with um, a non-intrusive thought. So, and I realized that was a compulsion that needed to be cut out. So, slowly but surely, I stopped repeating those actions. If I picked something up and it coincided with an intrusive thought, well, I went along with it. I did not repeat that action. I just carried on with whatever I was doing. That is something that eventually I I repeated so many times that um, it became okay for me to do that, and I stopped feeling less anxious um, whenever I did not repeat a certain action. Um, the third important the third very important part was also disputing my fears and beliefs. So the reason I kept doing those mental compulsions was because I I feared that if I let those thoughts come in, I would get a panic attack. I would probably collapse on the ground. Um, I would end up alone, or I think the other one was that Yeah, I just felt something bad would happen. Nothing specific, but I just thought something bad would happen. So as I read Albert Ellis's books, and as I read his method of how to dispute your irrational fears and beliefs, I applied those to what mine were, and I broke those down. So disputing my perspectives really, really helped, because I could see that they were coming from a very irrational place. They were very exaggerated in my head, because OCD blows up your fears to a very large extent. And it makes you feel like you have to perform this compulsion, otherwise everything will be ruined. I I broke that down, and that is something that really helped me release that control that I was exerting, and those mental compulsions I was doing on repeat all the time. And the fourth very important thing is that for me, doing exposures really, really helped, because doing exposures for contamination OCD was a way for me to really face my fears and go into that deeply uncomfortable feeling of anxiety, of any symptom that I was afraid of having. So because I went into those exposures and I thought, okay, um, let's face that fear of being alone. Let's face that fear of having a panic attack. Let's face that fear of something so bad happening to me that I cannot carry on with life. So facing those fears really helped me break that illusion that fear was holding over me, that you have to avoid the worst case scenario at all costs, and there was pertinent danger all the time. And doing that also, as a result, helped me be okay with any kind of uncomfortable feelings or any discomfort that I may face, but also letting go of those compulsions and slowly decreasing them. So now I think I am at a point where I still have some mental compulsions, but by practicing these 3 4 things, I have been able to not do those mental compulsions anymore, and they have been reduced significantly. Which is why I don't feel mentally exhausted and tired all the time. I don't feel physically exhausted all the time. I don't feel numb all the time and emotionless like I used to. Um, so yeah, and all in all, I think what I wanted to touch upon is that it's all about learning to release that inner control that you're constantly trying to exert on yourself, because the more you do it, the more your anxiety and OCD will get fueled, and the more they will strongly latch on to those fears that you're having. Slowly but surely practice letting go of that control, because that is the one thing that will allow you to cut out those mental compulsions. Um, Let the fear and anxiety take over, because unless and until you do not start doing that, your fear will be intact and it will still have a hold over you. For this, I would say Paul David's book At Last Alive and Claire Weeks's Hope and Help for the Nerves. These are really helpful books because they really gave me an insight as to how your brain and your body work in relation to anxiety. Because when we are performing mental compulsions, our body and our mind is already tired with OCD, because there's so much adrenaline being pumped in our systems all the time. And what we are doing by performing those mental compulsions, or even physical compulsions for that matter, is that we are forcing an already tired and exhausted mind and body to work even more. So So naturally it would really drain you eventually, and it would you're running on empty basically. So it is all about letting your body and your mind rest, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, which is the paradox, because resting is what's making your body feel a little anxious. But yeah, you need to let your body and your mind really really rest, and as Paul David says, heal itself. um, there are some incredibly insightful chapters that he has written in his book, so I would really suggest you get a hold of that book as soon as you can. So I think those are all the points that I wanted to cover, and I hope this makes you feel less alone, because I think mental compulsion is something that is another aspect of OCD that, like many others, that makes people feel very very isolated. So yeah, and I'll see you guys soon with another video. Bye bye.